Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us today. I know it's the fourth day, so thank you so much for turning up. Do you recall, as a DevOps engineer, when multiple application owners used to reach out to you to make a change across multiple workloads, the same change? Or as a tech leader, when you took an organization-wide goal, let's say to improve the security posture, and you found that one account was doing better than the others, and you wondered, how can I replicate the success of one account across others? Today, you're going to walk out of this session learning how you can automate repetitive infrastructure tasks to improve operational efficiency. Not just that, our goal is to showcase how you can build a cloud automation practice in your organization. Hi, I'm Priyanka Chaturvedi, Senior Manager with AWS, and joining me today is Nitin Verma, Principal Specialist SA in AWS. Before I proceed, I'd like to apologize that our FSI customer could not join us at reInvent due to a personal emergency. So we'll look out for other opportunities where we can hear how they are building on AWS. With that, let's get started. In our agenda today, we are going to talk about the key objectives of operational excellence that you keep in mind in order to maximize your return on investment on AWS. Then we are going to dive into 3 very specific use cases where we are going to talk about day-to-day infrastructure tasks, where we have found some inefficiencies, and we are going to showcase some alternate ways to get around them. In the second half, we are then going to dive deeper into building a cloud automation practice to showcase how AWS aligns automation and the cultural aspect to get outcomes. And then we'll wrap up the session giving you some resources and summarize the key takeaways. OK, so it's going to be a very exciting 60 minutes, so stay tuned. All right, so you want to maximize your return on investment on AWS and attain operational excellence. Now, I'll just quickly back up a bit. One must think, what is operational excellence? Now, there are many definitions out there. But what I see as operational excellence, or a simple process of that, would be it is a continuous improvement of operations to ensure that it is effective and efficient in delivering a business outcome. So it's very important that you ensure you're focusing on the effectiveness and efficiency of it. And why do you do that? Overall, you keep continuously improving your process, monitor your performance, and this will lead you to your return on investment. OK, so you follow the AWS best practice. Now, you want to get to operational excellence. You're following AWS best practices. What are those? When you're architecting your infrastructure or your workload, you always try to build for failure, resilient workloads, resilient infrastructure, so that you can have business uptime. Now, when you're taking these design decisions, you also want to ensure that you're able to identify risks in your environment, how you're capturing these risks, and how you're remediating these risks. So try to reduce your risk. Security is job 0, so we always want to make sure security is not an afterthought. What that means, when you are designing your architecture, don't do the entire design and then go for a security review. Bring security forward, make them part of your design decisions. And of course, optimize. You want to keep your costs low and make sure your resources are fully optimized. Then you build towards these operational excellence capabilities. These are the major capabilities that we talk about when it comes to operational excellence. So how are you managing your landing zone overall? Do you have good governance in place? Are you able to audit and log your entire infrastructure? Do you have good tagging in place? And tagging is very critical because we are going to talk about it in the rest of our sessions. so on and so forth. But when you start looking into these capabilities, you pick any, for example, cost optimization, you will realize that these capabilities do not apply to a single application owner or a single account. Cost optimization applies to all your accounts, your entire footprint. So in that case, who is actually responsible for carrying out these activities? How do you tackle this multi-account outcomes that you are trying to look for? The compliance that you want to achieve at scale. And working with customers like yourself, we realize that there are so many such day-to-day operational tasks where we feel that there is an easier or a better or efficient way to do it, and operational excellency we see often drops in the way customers are used to doing it. And I have picked up 3 of such use cases that I want to discuss with you. The first being, I wanted to start with security. So in this particular example, I'm talking about using AWS config. So the use case is you have an EC2 instance, and the EC2 instance has a security group attached to it. The security group is allowing all inbound traffic. Now, this is not a good design by default unless you have a legit use case. For the purpose of this example, this is not the desired outcome. So you have configured AWS config, the rule triggers, and through your notification service, your security or DevOps, depending how you have your platform engineering and ops engineering team set up, one of them is notified. Now, the security themselves, they can't make the change in the security group. Reason being, they don't have the context of your workload. Maybe it is a legit design, maybe it is not. So they are going to reach out to the application owner or the business owner to understand, is it okay to make the change in the security group? The business owner goes back, checks the workload context, gives your permission to the DevOps engineer, who then makes the change in the security group. The point to note here is, from the time that the config rule had triggered to the time that the DevOps engineer has actually made the change, in our experience, it is typically a 1 to 2 weeks of wait time. In fact, more. And throughout this cycle, you have this security exposure in your environment. And point to note is you will run this entire workflow every time you want to make the same change, whether it is on an application, on an EC2, or on multiple accounts. So let's see, is there a different way to approach this? I want to lead with standardization. So that's something, when we want to do things at scale, we want to focus on standardization. And how we are going to remediate this situation is, we are going to place in a config repository. Now, what is a config repository? From the name itself, you can get most of it, where we are trying to store information or configuration specific to your workload. In this particular case, you can also try to load it with certain account number, if the environment type is non-production, if the workload tag says this is a standard workflow. You know, a workload can be categorized as a category A workload, which means the lowermost basic workload, and all the way up to a category C workload, which means it could be internet-facing, your end customer-facing workload. It could be as good as a financial workload that is used by millions of your customers, a workload that has requirement of compliance that needs to be met. So you define these unique characteristics of your workload and save that in your config database. Now let's see how the flow would be. So you have your EC2 instance, security group attached, same situation, config rule comes in. Now there are two invocation paths, as you can see in step number 2. And depends your appetite of spend. What we are going to do here is use the event bridge service. Either you can use the event bridge scheduler, which wakes up at certain time and looks out for changes, or you can use the AWS config compliance notification service. That is more real time. It will tell you exactly when the rule had triggered, and it will take an action, unlike the scheduler, where the rule has triggered, it gets saved in an event bridge, and then later on it wakes up and an action is taken. Either of the paths you can choose, just that the one where you're using the compliance notification service, there is an additional price to it. The event bridge is going to trigger a Lambda solution. What is the Lambda going to do is it's going to read your config repository and map it back to your EC2 instance tags to see what matches. So if it matches that this is the account number and this is the workload category that says that it is OK to make a change, on the first Saturday of the month, it is actually going to remediate this on your behalf. So it uses Ops Center to create these ops items. The ops items can be scheduled in the sense it will take an action on the first Saturday or whatever date you define, or it can be run now. Systems Manager runbooks are used to make the change in your security group as step number 5, and it also sends a notification service, a notification to your business owner to identify that, okay, a change has been made in your environment. You see how we have simplified this workflow and reduced any kind of wait time, and at the same time standardized it. So the same change can now be made across accounts that you wish to, as has been defined in your config repository, and for the outcomes to take place. So tagging is very critical. Ensure that you have a good tagging mechanism, and at the same time, enforce these tags. In fact, most of the examples or activities that we talk about, when you want to reduce wait time, we always say that the system can only read tags. The workload context or the environment context does not exist automatically. So make sure your tagging is perfect. Okay. All right, let's talk about another example. And I was thinking, what should it be? But then, cost optimization is something that never goes out of fashion. And we genuinely want you to save costs. So I've picked up an example. I think everyone in this room would have faced this sometime or the other. And it is about an unattached EBS volume. So what's happening in this case? Unattached EBS volume is existing. It gets triggered or fired in your trusted advisor. Your DevOps engineer picks it up. Again, they are not the decision makers, so they are going to reach out to your business owner who needs to evaluate. Now, why the business owner needs to evaluate is some regulated industry like FSI or healthcare, there might be a compliance need that an EBS volume must be kept for 7 years or 90 days, whatever the industry that you are in. Based on the feedback that he provides, the DevOps engineer then executes the change, and your EBS volume is released. Again, I'd like to highlight the time difference. From the time that EBS volume was found to be unattached to the time that it was actually released, it's 1+ month. And I'm always talking best case scenarios. In fact, after the decision is made by the business owner, you all know there will be a CAB approval on your end, so there will be another few weeks of wait time till it actually happens. So you realize the money now in your pocket. So again, you're going to repeat this entire workflow every time that you want to release an EBS volume. So you're spending time as well as money. Okay, we are going to see how we can make this better. It's still alerting on your unattached volume, which is going in Trusted Advisor. But what we are going to do here is, again, lead with standardization. We are going to build an org policy config repository. What does that mean? So we want to save, again, your workload context through tags, your account numbers, your severity, your environment types. But there's something else that we want to save this time, which is, what is your organization's policy about when is it okay to delete something? Because some organizations might decide that if it is non-production, unattached, on a tier 1 workload, it is okay to release that in 90 days. Some might want to keep it for 1 year. Whatever those definitions are, we are going to have those org policies defined for your organization, for your subsidiaries, for your line of businesses, and get them saved. Again, there's a reason why I have asked the business owner to be included in these discussions. As much as you want to standardize this across your organization, you should also seek feedback from your business owner who might have an exception that is required. So this time, the story would be your scheduled Lambda gets triggered. The scheduled Lambda is going to read your org policy. They're also going to read your trusted advisor finding, read the tags of your resources, and use Systems Manager to release your EBS volume. You have made a change in your environment, so it is always good to use notification service to send a notification to your business owner. And tagging is the heart of it all, so make sure your taggings are in place. Okay, so those are two examples that we have touched through where it is a very common use case, but it'll open up in terms of potential that you might be seeing in your environment today. And then I was thinking, what should be the third example? And I thought, it's still fresh in everybody's mind. It was a long-haul journey for us all to get here after the RDS SSL cert rotation. So I thought, OK, it is worth it. Let's talk about it. We actually spent months and months, 6+ months more, in getting everybody's RDS SSL certs rotated. So what was the situation is that it is end of life, your RDS SSL cert needs to be rotated. Trusted advisor picked it up. DevOps engineer reached out to your business owner. Now, the business owner has to take a decision in terms of, is this a shared database? Are multiple application owners using the same database? What if I rotate the cert and an application fails? In this particular example, we found that the most amount of wait time was on the business owner, because he did not have all those detailed insights to take the decision on time. Now, poor governance, you want to stay on top of your game. You don't want to be in a situation where your SSL cert is rotated forcefully, causing you an outage. And for larger organizations, they had hundreds of thousands of RDS instances. So imagine doing these processes on every RDS instance. All right, so what can we do differently? In this particular case, what we did is we have taken an example of a Python-based script. This is something that we have done for customers. We built a Python script, and what this Python script is doing is basically reading your trusted advisor finding, where RDS SSL has been flagged. It then goes and reads the parameters of your RDS instance. As I said, the biggest amount of wait time was when the business owner did not have the insights in terms of, is it OK to rotate the cert? So how do we enable these business owners? In fact, make it simpler. You don't need to go to the business owner, and the system should be smart enough to take calculated risk. So in this particular case, it is reading your RDS parameters as well as your RDS tags. So define your tags. Which application is running on this RDS instance? Who are the application owners? Is it a lower environment or a higher environment? Is it open to make a change on weekdays or weekends, once a month, those kind of information? Everything is tag-based. You need to make sure your RDS parameters as well as tags are helping in these decision-making. Now, this Python script in step number 3, with these information, it is preparing two kinds of list. A list of RDS instances that do not require reboot, and a list of RDS instances that requires a reboot. And that simplified the batch processing of SSL certs. So what happens in step number 4 is, using these information and the RDS list, it is going to create scheduled events per RDS instance. And the Lambda function is where it is picking up these schedules, triggering off the SSL cert rotation, and sending a notification back to you that a change has been made. Now, we tried it out, and we found that it was very successful in expediting the RDS SSL rotation for our customers. So I would highly recommend you to start thinking about lifecycle management of patterns like these and how you can simplify and automate them. And again, tagging is key to it all. Now, these are 3 examples that I have given, but the potential is huge as you can get out of it. So what does it come down to? One might say that, yeah, this is good, but I think we are doing all right the way we are working now. Absolutely, you can feel that way, that you are doing all right. But from the workflows, it is very clear that you are definitely spending time on repetitive tasks. You're spending money. And there is also a risk exposure that is existing in each of these things. So do you want to run in that risk? Sometimes this can blow up, and it can also cause a brand image impact. So these are some pitfalls of not considering the alternate approaches or not thinking through how you can reduce these wait times and not repeat them every time it needs to be done. So think about the scale and success factor. So I would recommend a shift left approach. When I say shift left, the workflows that we discussed, try to look at the right-hand side and push your right-hand side as much as possible towards your left-hand side. What that means is try to automate as much as possible so that you're getting these outcomes at scale. And this is a very simple but impactful code. The most powerful tool we have as developers is automation. This is true. And it puts automation in the center of it all. But automation cannot be done in an ad hoc manner, bear in mind, because AWS has 200 plus services. These services can be automated in so many permutation combinations. So do you think it is all about every team going and just starting to automate? In our experience, to become operationally excellent, if you look at the big picture, automation is only half the story. So how do you mechanize it? Because as of now, it is very ad hoc. Some organizations are doing automation, some teams might be doing automation, but automation is not mechanized. There isn't a practice. So when you talk about automation and practice, there's a people, process, and technology angle. And we all know this. Technology is never the problem. So when we look at people, process, and technology together, there's also a cultural element that we have to keep in mind. There is a cultural shift that would be required by our people, by our organization, to make automation a practice. Cross-team collaboration. Now, we often say DevSecOps, but half of the time, the teams are not necessarily working together. They are not integrated at the hip from day one. So for you to build cloud automation as a practice, you need to have an automation-first mindset, but that does not mean anyone will automate whatever they want. You want to come together as an entity to take the right decision, prioritize what needs to be done. And once you get there, with this cross-collaboration and automation is where you're going to get the agility and efficiency of operations that we were talking about. This will also allow you to build more controls that are going to remove humans being in the center of decision-making. We want humans to be helping build those business differentiators and supercharging your innovation for your company, not necessarily for how the infrastructure is running. Now, this is the very standard and basic of setting up cloud automation practice. One thing is clear from the 3 use cases that we do need automation. Now let's hear from Nitin how AWS is doing it inside our organization and how you can take it away.
Cool. Thank you, Priyanka. Let me see who can wave a hand at me. Yeah, awesome. Cool. Great. I just want to make sure your ears, eyes, and hands are in sync because they are very important to build the cloud automation practice. In fact, any practice. Sorry, I was just joking. I just want to make sure you are all live. So today, you have heard from Priyanka how automation can be a key differentiator to your business. And unfortunately, our customer could not join, and you would have heard how the time and money saved through the automation can be well spent on business automation or business innovation or personal innovation, personal learning, or you want to spend more time with your dear colleagues and families and friends. Today, I'm going to talk about how you can build the cloud automation practice because you have heard automation is just half the story. We want to integrate into the cloud automation practice to achieve the operational excellence at scale in your own organizations. I'm going to talk about some of the best practices, some of the key concepts, some of the fundamentals we have built and used and developed over the period of time to build our cloud automation practice and achieve operational excellence at scale. Now, before that, I know, like you, many customers and folks understand that automation is very important and it's key. However, they are often presented with few challenges. When you talk about the cloud automation practice to them, they are often face this challenge like, how do I get started? How do I prioritize things? Why do I need it? So I'll try to address these challenges today. I will start with some key concepts. Those are the foundation building blocks for our cloud automation practice and many practices. I'll start with the first concept of flywheel. I hope you have heard this term. Amazon has used, this is an Amazon philosophy, and Amazon has used the concept of flywheel for many, many years in order to achieve operational excellence and reduce the service prices over the period of time. And in the automation concept, in the automation flywheel, you have identified manual work, and you want to create automation, build consistency, gain consistency, and then gain operational efficiencies. But this flywheel actually, let me define what is flywheel. In the actual term, the flywheel is a machinery concept. It's a big, very heavy wheel. So it is used to gain momentum over the period of time to achieve the business outcome. So you start with a smaller wheel, but then as you tend to move in the virtuous cycle, you tend to move the flywheel, and as a result, you gain the momentum and you get the desired business outcome, many different outcomes which you are aiming for. In this concept, with the automation, now you are building more and more automation, and the flywheels tends to move. You are now less and less work. Now that same time and money you can use for business innovation or to reduce your service pricing or increase productivity or spend more time with your family and friends. The second concept is the tenets. Whenever we start any new function, any practice, we start with the tenets. Similarly here, we have tenets. So tenets are, think of tenets as your guardrails. They allow you to make sure you're focused. And the tenets has to be very simple, clear and crisp, to the point. They are just your high-level guardrails. For first one, for us is very obvious, like you automate the repetitive tasks. Now it may sound simple, but this is now keeping constant message, giving a constant message to us, our people, processes, and technology, and then, hey, we look for the task where we are spending so much time. We want to automate that. This is our motto. We automate repetitive tasks. Second is return on investment. You don't build automation just for the sake of automation or just for fun. So you need to make sure there is a return on investment. Next, we avoid reinventing the wheel. That's another tenet for us. It means that not every time you have a task to automate, you want to reinvent the whole wheel. You want to utilize existing automation, existing building blocks to build a bigger automation or inject an automation into an existing automation. Last but not the least is we measure from the day one. So this is very important, like why we build the automation. Are we getting the impact? Is it working the way we want it to work? Now these tenets and the flywheel concept becomes your building blocks to build, support, and govern your cloud automation practice. Now let's get into the people, process, and technology. Priyanka spoke about how these three needs to be in sync to achieve an outcome like your ear, hands, and eyes. Let's get into the people perspective. Now, these are the 4 key roles or entities we need for our cloud automation practice. Number 1, the users. Now, in our case, these are platform operations team. They are the ones who are doing day-to-day work, running those automation, using that automation, or running a lot of doing a lot of manual tasks and finding the ways and opportunities to automate. And they are getting that data over the period of time and passing it to our governance team. And the governance team is made up of TPM and SDM, the technical program manager and system development manager. They get the inputs from users, from automations, from customers, various tools, and they govern and they make sure they prioritize it, ensure that we are adhering to the guardrails and the business practices. Then they pass these automation requirements to our developers. In our case, they are platform engineering team who builds the automation using DevOps practices. Now you see security in the middle. As Priyanka mentioned, security is a job zero for us. So at every stage, when users are running the automation, make sure they are running in the safe way. Governance team is in sync with the security team when they're making decisions. I'll go through that. And the development team are building that tool in the DevSecOps manner. And when these all 4 entities work in sync, in cyclic manner, in the continuous improvement cycle, the flywheel tends to move. And then we call it a virtuous cycle. And the virtuous cycle happens at many stages. And I'll go through that. Now, these governance team are presented with the biggest challenges. Now they're getting feeds from users, toolings, automation, customers. They are also presented with this task like how do you prioritize what to automate? In that sense, we being a data-driven company, of course we want to start with the data. Do we have enough data? So they look for certain criteria to automate. Do we have enough data to analyze and qualify and build the automation for that? Second, what is the urgency? This is another criteria. Is there a workaround available? Do we have a smaller automation? What is the urgency of this automation? So they look into that. They look into impact as well. What is the impact? What is the ROI? Like how much cost and efforts we are going to spend on that, and how much time and hours we are saving. And the last is, but not the least, is the criticality. They also want to make sure, how critical is this automation for us, for our business, or our customers, or is it a major security issue we need to fix at scale? So now imagine they are getting hundreds of requests from our tools, from our users, customers, how they are going to measure against all these criteria. So they decided to come up with a metrics called Cloud Automation Prioritization Metrics. Now, this is an example of a metric which one of our functions, AWS Managed Services, has used. They decided to measure some of these categories against urgency and impact. For example, they want to make sure, like, do you have enough data? And if yes, you have enough data, and there is an urgency they think that becomes an urgent thing, they put a score from 0 to 10. And similarly, if it is a KCI, it's a key customer issue, and happening, it's been highlighted in our dashboards, then we have a higher urgency, higher impact. And they put a score against all of these things and get a final score. The higher the score is, the higher the priority for automation. Now this is our first lens, we get the prioritized item. Then we also pass it through a second lens, which is the efforts. How much efforts, development efforts we are going to spend on this automation in order to understand that, how do we get a quick benefit or return for the investment. And then we get a final prioritized item. Now these items, we pass it on to the governance team pass it on to the development team, and they use it using the automation development lifecycle. Now, many of you are probably developers, you have gone or seen the development life cycles. This is no different to the SDLC life cycle. However, you get the incoming request, you develop it, you pass it through alpha, beta, gamma testing, development, production stage. But there are two key things required for automation. Number one is the early feedback. Because when it comes to automation, in practice, you don't want automation to fail or give an undesired response, because now there is no human intervention. This is automated. You need to make sure you are doing the right thing at the beginning, at the right first time. And so we include our end users right at the gamma stage and the beta stage. And so they can provide the testing and they themselves can use the testing, or you can do a private beta with some certain customers, for example. So they can do the testing and give us the feedback and reviews. Same thing after it is released, they can do the feedback. Now the second thing is, I have mentioned they develop the automation using the platform engineering team, develop the automation using DevSecOps, CI/CD practices, and Git repository for code and all that. Now, they have given access to our users to the Git repository so that they can make changes to the code directly for the smaller bugs, for the issues, and those commits to the code, if they are adhering to our guardrails and all our checking criteria, then the commit done by the users is actually automatically goes all the way through the beta testing and production. If it doesn't adhere to the guardrails, then of course it goes back to the engineering team, and then they also prioritize. There is another cycle for that to prioritize the gaps and the features. Now, when this whole cycle begins, and the continuous cycle of innovation and improvement works, it gains the speed, it turns and tends to turn the flywheel, the virtuous cycle begins. Let's move on to the technology part. Now we have discussed about people, how the people are organized, processes, prioritization metrics, building process. In terms of technology, I want to talk about two examples. Like Priyanka, I want to talk about two key common examples which can become very challenging at scale. And these are the real world examples for us as well. And I want to connect these three entities through the workflows. The first one I want to talk about is the identity and access management at scale, because we have 200 plus application, and there are many access controls available for each application. Second is the support case and ticket handling at scale. So I hope you are all familiar with support cases or ticket handling at one stage. So let's get started with the IAM first. Now imagine, I hope you have ever built a IAM policy in JSON. Yep, I'm sure you were, or you have seen a IAM policy. Because we have 200 plus applications, and each application can have so many actions, controls, granular access controls available, building an IAM policy for a particular role or an application user can be a bit daunting. And it can become very long and complex as well. Now imagine you have to troubleshoot or update and debug that IAM policy across hundreds of accounts. And imagine now you have to do update operations to an IAM policy or a debug operations or a create operations across hundreds of policies, across hundreds of accounts. Now then it becomes really complex and challenging. And the reason it is challenging and complex is because IAM comes with a specific structure. There is a terminology, there is a nomenclature, you have to make sure it's all in the sequence. And also it is very prone to error, and because it is a security thing, and a star could actually change your life. Not only a star in a wrong place can actually change your whole life, not only your life, your entire business dynamics. Because if you are putting a wrong star at the wrong place, and then what can happen is that you are giving access to your resources to an entity which can utilize your data or whatever, make bad use of that. Last is that there is an ongoing governance and operations, because it's not set and forget. There could be a business need, there is a new API actions comes in place. You have to continuously update it. Now, this is the challenge we had, making IAM CRUD operations at scale. So if you see number one, our customers, users were sending us a lot of IAM CRUD operations at scale, like create, update, delete sort of operations, very, very high manual requests. Now, operations team started with the manual changes. They understand the pattern. They identified the pattern. They started gathering the data, like how much time we are spending on that, what is the volume, what type of change requests are coming. And they passed this data to the governance team, which did the data analytics on that, do the prioritization metrics, and then they prioritize this one, pass it to the engineering team. They develop those through IAM automation and pipelines and infrastructure as a code. And then they build the automation and released it to another central automation called OpsCLI. Now, I want to connect back to the tenets. We don't want to reinvent the wheel for every automation, so they leveraged an existing automation and plugged in this IAM automation into that. And ops teams were already familiar with that, so after automation, now they were able to use that OpsCLI and deploy do all the CRUD operations across IAM at scale across hundreds of accounts in a safe, scalable, and very easy to perform manner. Now, as this, of course, this goes through that cloud automation development lifecycle, and if there are any gaps, we work on this in a continuous improvement cycle and tend to move the flywheel, and the virtuous cycle begins. And as a result of that flywheel and the virtuous cycle, the result has been very, very fruitful for us. Not only we were able to do the IAM validation, updates, CRUD operations at scale in a safe manner, but we were able to improve the TTR by 34%. And at the same time, we saved 6,700 work hours in that given year. And of course, that drastically improved the customer satisfaction. Next example is the support case and ticket handling. I'm sure you must have raised a support case in your life, or you have worked or seen a support dashboard or an operations center. Now, operations teams are challenged with multiple customers are sending multiple tickets and cases to us. And the operations team are looking into the data and trying to understand what do we need to do next, what runbooks need to be executed, how do we solve the problem. And the reason it is complex is that the case management is time-consuming, difficult, and a bit complicated is because that the case management tools were never designed with automation in mind. So there were a lot of free text. You have to go and analyze. There's a lot of human intervention, too many runbooks for the operations engineers to consult and execute, so they're prone to human errors as well. What we decided that this is a pretty big challenge for us, and we decided to put our friends, a new friend, AI, ML, and LLM to the test. We sent all the data coming through the support cases to the LLM and AI and ML services we have. Our intention was twofold. One is to classify the type of case, and second is to recommend the runbook which we need to execute to resolve that problem or the case. Now, out of that, we actually went to the next step. If, based upon our guardrails and our threshold set, and the high confidence is coming out to be very high out of this recommendation and classification, we actually take it to the next step, and our automation engine will actually execute that automation and resolve the customer problem. And if the confidence is low, then we will pass that output from that from our automation engine to humans, and they will verify and review, and they still run those recommended automation if they feel they are correct, or they will provide the feedback. So we called it automated ticket classification and recommendation service. This is kind of a high-level diagram where customer requests are coming through the Lambda and our automation engine. We were leveraging Comprehend, Bedrock, and now Amazon Q as well, collectively making an informed decision whether this automation is something we can directly run, or do we need to pass it to the operations team and let them run and provide the feedback. I want to share one example, a real-time example. Here, customer has raised a support case in a free text, asking that, hey, I have a transit gateway, and I have created a new VPC. Can you attach that VPC to my transit gateway and also update the transit VPC route table? And this has classified that the result is that it has identified what is the type of an action. Action is VPC route table, and you need to associate that route table. And it has already identified these are the 3 top runbooks which you need to run in this case, and these are the CLI command and the change types for further recommendations and internal SSM documents which you need to run. Again, if you see on the top, there is a feedback. So I am connecting back to the dots again to our tenets, and that we measure from the day 1. So we are getting the feedback and passing the feedback to our LLM as well, that if it is a correct recommendation or not, and then automatically improving. As a result, this has been again very, very fruitful to us. We are, as of Q3 2024, our classification accuracy rate has been very high, up to 99%. And the next step recommendation has been as high as 85%. Now, I want to also connect back to the automation flywheel concept for continuous improvement. Now here, in this case, we were able to, in the automation flywheel concept, we were able to analyze the text, getting the classification and recommendation, assessing the automation rate, and gaining the operational efficiency. But as we do it over the period of time and tends to move through this wheel, the flywheel turns to move, and now it is giving us more tangible outcomes. It is also identifying what are the frequent requests coming from through the AI ML. We are now able to get identified what are the candidates where we need to invest more time, what are the frequent requests coming, and so we are able to build new automation at a faster pace in order to reduce our service pricing or increase productivity at scale. Now, I have hopefully addressed that how do I get started, why do you need cloud automation practice, how do I start it, where to focus, how do you prioritize. But there is one question which you still need to figure out. That is, do you have as an organization priorities or the skills and the time? Are you going to build this cloud automation practice and it is going to give you a return on investment? Now, the answer could be varied based upon your business priorities and challenges, but I want to provide you some information to help you overcome this challenge. I want to talk quickly about operating models. So if you are familiar with AWS well-architected framework, in the AWS well-architected framework, there is an operational excellence pillar, and in that operational excellence pillar, it talks about the 4 operating model. Now, there is nothing wrong or right with any operating model, but we see that it is from decentralized operating model to a centralized operating model. And customer on their migration modernization journey, they tend to move from 1 to 2 to 3 or 4. But after talking with many organizations, we have seen customers tend to move from 1 to 2 before moving to 3 or 4. And the reason for that is they can actually accelerate their cloud automation practice by leveraging the people, process, and technology, the power of people, process, and technology of a service provider. Because they have already invested years in building many cloud automated blocks from which you can utilize and build your own automation which is required for your business practices, so that you don't have to start from zero. Or you can also learn from them and build your own full practice. For that, I just want to quickly show you what is the journey of AWS managed services in this case, where automation is a journey. You can't automate everything from a day 1. So even the whole service was built with automation in mind. They started with around 40% automation. And now with being powered by Gen AI and AI ML, our automation, 95% of the automation tasks they are doing is automated. Now, they have already, over the period of time, they have built and invested in many automation which they believe is required to gain operational excellence. So this is just a small list, but these are some of the key things I wanted to highlight, like resource tagger. As Priyanka mentioned, the tagging is very important. So it is already an automation to enforce the tagging. And the second one is the continuous compliance, because now your issues are happening. They have built a automation which is keeping a continuous compliant posture in your accounts across hundreds of accounts. Resource scheduler to save cost, to do the cost optimization, which Priyanka has mentioned, so you can shut down the resources when not needed. Trusted remediator, change access control for security. Trusted remediator for all the information and the findings coming from AWS Trusted Advisor are being automated, so that whenever there is a finding, you can have a business approval, you can automate and remediate that. Patch orchestration to do a patching at large scale. Auto remediation for many of the hundreds of infrastructure tasks, and also the noise reduction and so on. But if you want to utilize a managed service provider to accelerate your journey to the cloud automation practice, I have two advice for you. Number one is, make sure as you get mature, you reduce your dependency on the managed service provider over the period of time. And for that, you want to make sure when you choose a managed service provider, you don't go for the long-term contracts and all that, so that you make sure you are actually using them in a pay-as-you-go model, so that over the period of time, you can reduce your dependency and as you gain your operational efficiency. With that, I want to leave you with few resources where you can scan these QR codes and learn more about some of the key concepts and processes which I have spoken about, and get more knowledge about that. I'll pause for a few seconds you can take a picture. And finally, I have two key takeaways for you and one ask. Number one is, as Priyanka mentioned, automation there are so many services we know in AWS, and automation is half the story. Based upon our experience managing so many customers, is that building a cloud automation practice around it is very, very important. And so that you can gain efficient and effective operations over the period of time and gain the operational excellence and desired business outcomes. And second thing, as I mentioned, you can build your own cloud automation practice, or you can leverage the people, process, and tooling and the power and the experience of a managed service provider to accelerate your journey, or you can do both. You can start your automation practice at the same time, have them next to you and learn from them and accelerate your journey. With that, there is one final ask to you. Today, when you leave the room, or you go back to your home on the plane, think about one task which has been bothering you, and you have been spending a lot of manual time on that. Think about one task which you can automate. Automate that, measure that, show the impact to your business, and raise a case for cloud automation practice. With that, thank you very much. Myself and Priyanka will be here to answer any question. Hope you enjoyed the session. Have a nice day.